One of the stronger position groups right now for the New York Rangers are definitely the centermen. Right now, you could honestly say that for lines number 1, 2, and 4, the center positions for those lines are pretty much locked in place. But there is definitely a pretty big question mark right now with that 3C spot. Who will end up becoming the third line center for the Rangers to begin this upcoming season? And in today's video, I figured we not only kind of take a look and try and answer that question to see who could potentially become the third line center, and also take a look at the three kind of potential locked in centermen for those three positions, but also we're going to take a look at TSN's 2025-26 summer kind of center tier rankings for each NHL team's center position group there, and we're just going to kind of take a look at where they have the New York Rangers ranked. And I already have, done this same thing for the goaltenders, the defensemen, and the wingers as well, which I'll have those videos linked at the end of this one. But let's get right into things here, and we'll take a look at the tier list from Travis Yost and TSN, and they go on to have in tier 1, the Avalanche, Stars, Oilers, Panthers, Lightning, Leafs, and Golden Knights. And then in tier 2, you've got the Kings, Wild, Devils, Rangers, Senators, and the Penguins. But in tier 2, you do have the New York Rangers. And I think a pretty good starting point here would be to just take a look at all of the centermen that I think are kind of competing for these NHL spots. First off, of course, you've got two guys that are definitely locked in place. They're in the top 6, of course, JT Miller and Vincent Trocheck. Then you've got a couple guys here fighting for those third-line center spots with, Mika Zibanejad possibly. Whether or not he'll be at center or wing is yet to be seen. But then you've got Juuso Parssinen and Johnny Brodzinski, of course, as well, probably fighting for maybe some wing spots, but also mainly that third-line center spot. And then you've got Sam Carrick, who is just a really solid fourth-line center. That's what he's going to be for this team. I can pretty much 100% lock that in there. He's going to be the fourth line center, and he's going to be just a really solid player for this team. He's not going to be anything too incredible or bad. He's just going to be a good, solid fourth line center. And now we've got some prospects that are going to be competing for some of these center spots, but probably aren't going to make the roster, but, could be call-up candidates at some point to, come up to the NHL and play, whether that's at center or wing, of course. But these three prospects are Noah Laba, Dylan Rubrek, and Brendan Brisson. Noah Laba is a really good kind of two-way center prospect there, 6'2", just cracked into the kind of pro hockey level last season at the end of his college season there with Colorado College. He ended up having a really great season once again with them, but then took the step up to pro hockey, where he'll be once again with the Hartford Wolfpack, more than likely to begin this upcoming season. Then you've got Dylan Rubrek, that big 6'7", quite, fast skater there for his size, especially great hands, has some good skill offensively, needs to work on his all-around game there, but a pretty solid, offensive kind of skilled forward there for someone who's standing at about 6'7" there. So I think he's a pretty enticing player, can play center and wing, but probably is maybe more of a winger at the NHL level if he does make it. And then you got Brendan Brisson, who was picked up in that kind of Carson Soucy trade there, just as kind of a almost kind of throw-in piece, I guess you could say. But he's a bit of kind of depth for the organization there. He's starting to kind of push a little more towards his kind of mid-20s now, but still technically a prospect, and maybe has a little bit of upside there, but at best, I would probably imagine ends up becoming a kind of bottom 6 player at the very, very most. And next up here, we're going to take a look at what Travis Yost actually said in the article there about the New York Rangers being in tier 2, and he goes on to say, New York had no problem generating offense with JT Miller on the ice last season. After being traded to Broadway in January, Miller and the Blue Shirts averaged 3.6 goals per 60 minutes at even strength, a number inside of the top 15 and comparable to that of Pastrnak. So that's pretty incredible, obviously. Worth monitoring, do the Rangers slide Mika Zibanejad out to the wing as they did in spurts last season there? Or does he serve as a high-end third-line pivot behind Miller and Vincent Trocheck? And that is definitely something I have talked about quite a bit over the last kind of few weeks now on this channel. I think it's definitely a pretty hot topic with Rangers fans right now, and definitely a big question with this team, because you have someone who's making $8.5 million per season for the foreseeable future now, who I think at this point has clearly taken a pretty big step back from his prime years with this team. He's obviously not that prime Mika Zibanejad anymore, and he probably won't get back to that, for being honest here, with where he's at in his career now, with how old he is. It's just probably not going to happen. We're not going to see Mika get back towards that insane kind of player that he once was, just before kind of COVID happened. So I think with where he's at right now, personally, for me, I think he should go to wing. I think with what we saw, once he made that kind of switch from center over to wing last season there, he ended up being about a point per game, whereas at center, he was about half a point per game. So he almost doubled his points per game while switching from center to wing, which is pretty incredible in itself. But also at center, I saw him be a bit of a liability defensively at moments. He was quite bad defensively this past season for this team and kind of looked disengaged at moments. So I really just think making that switch to wing there, playing alongside some guys maybe like a Will Cooley and JT Miller, two guys who are very physical, and we know Mika Zibanejad is not extremely physical, even though he's got some decent size to him. For his size there, he's not as physical as you'd like him to be. So I think going alongside some energetic, physical kind of guys who are always bringing 100% out there on the ice, they're always working their butts off, JT Miller and Will Cooley. So playing alongside some of those guys who also have that great kind of offensive and defensive game, I think could just be a great line there for all three of them. It could work out quite well. So personally, that's what I want to see as one of the forward lines in the top six is Will Cooley on the left, JT Miller down the middle, and Mika Zibanejad on the right. Of course, let me know in the comments whether or not you agree or disagree with kind of my thoughts on that, thinking it could be pretty good for this team and thinking that Mika Zibanejad should be on wing because, like I said, I think from what I saw last season there, from the kind of drastic differences from him being center and a winger, I think he just was so much better on wing compared to center. So that is kind of why I want to see him remain on wing and kind of continue on with that. But with Mike Sullivan coming in now, maybe he has a different plan in mind. And having Mika as a primary winger would also allow you to have him as a kind of backup centerman, which I think just provides a nice kind of extra bit of depth there down the middle. And I think overall, this Rangers team does have some decent center depth, but the talent level is lacking after guys like, a JT Miller and a Vincent Trocheck. It does drop off pretty fast. And although having a guy like, Johnny Brodzinski or Juuso Parssinen as that kind of third line center for opening night, it may not be completely ideal for a team that's really trying to compete for a playoff spot and, go on a possible long playoff run. It might not be the most ideal scenario, but I really just do feel like the way to get the most out of someone like a Mika Zibanejad at this point is to put him on wing. Like I said, his offense went up a bunch there once he made that switch, and I just think going alongside guys like JT Miller and Will Cooley, that could create a pretty dynamic line for this team, not only offensively, but defensively as well, and maybe physically, because Zibanejad may not be the most physical guy out there, but he does have some size to him, and going alongside guys like JT Miller and Will Cooley may open up a little more of that in his game. So I just think overall that could be a really great line for this team, and right now, center-wise for this team, I think they're in a pretty good spot. There is a bit of a question with that third line center spot, but we did see someone like Juuso Parssinen kind of heat up a bit at the end of last season there, so maybe he can continue some of that over into this upcoming season. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I do have some faith in this center core being one of the better ones in the entire NHL. Like, I'm not saying it's going to be like a top 5 center group in the entire league, but it definitely should be one of the top half ones, absolutely, because, this team does have 2 really great top 6 caliber centermen. They've also got a really great fourth line centerman in Sam Carrick, and they've also got some pretty good depth there as well that are going to be fighting for those third line center spots with guys like, like I said, Juuso Parssinen, Johnny Brodzinski, but also potentially Mika Zibanejad as well. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video as well. What are your thoughts on the Rangers being in Tier 2 here? And also, what are your thoughts on the New York Rangers center core in general? Do you think it's kind of good, bad? Are you worried about it? Are you excited? I mean, I think overall, like I said, it's a pretty solid core. The top 2 spots are absolutely locked in there. The fourth line center spot's locked in as well. But the big question right now is that third line center spot. So also, comment down below who you think will be that third line center. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.